So I guess we'll go ahead and get started here. So the name of this one is Make This Holiday Season the Healthiest Yet. If, basically, let's see here. So my name is Bryan Royer. I am a chiropractor. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about me in a second. But basically, the whole point of this is that, obviously the holidays can get stressful. There's, challenges with eating well and staying healthy and, not being stressed and everything else. So hopefully we'll be able to go through and talk about some things that might be able to give make things a little bit better this holiday season and hopefully in the seasons to come. Okay. So again, my name's Dr. Bryan Royer. I'm a chiropractor. I have a certification in functional neurology. I also have another one in chiropractic sports medicine. I've got a bunch of other different certifications, but I also have like a whole lot of education in nutrition and supplements and stuff like that. And I've been an instructor at Owens Community College in anatomy and physiology for probably well over a decade now. So yeah, so it's good stuff. So I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to some of this other stuff. The practice of it may not always be the best in comparison because I like my food just like everybody else does, but we'll kind of go from there. So the first thing that I wanted to kind of talk about was the general kind of situation that we all kind of find ourselves in now, right? Like obviously the holidays are right around the corner. There's not really anything that you can do to stop it. Kind of feel like, I'm not going to say that you're the Grinch or I'm the Grinch or anything, but like you can't really stop Christmas from coming, right? So, but things are a little bit different now as an adult as compared to when you were a kid, right? Back then, obviously, everything was like joy, excitement, everything was fun. And besides growing up, a bunch of different stuff obviously changed. And when you talk about it, there are surveys and stuff like that that are done where they talk about what people actually dread the most about the holiday season. And obviously, the results are kind of exactly what you'd expect. Um, and this one, obviously, this first one is going to be different now with COVID and everything, but the crowds in the long lines, 68% of people dread the crowds in the long lines. Obviously, online shopping and stuff like that has changed that to a degree. But the other ones are 37% of people are worried about gaining weight, 37% of people get worried about getting into debt. People get worried about gift shopping and buying the right stuff. I'm the same way. I'm not good at it. My wife is excellent at buying gifts. I am not good at buying gifts of what I know that people will like. But fortunately, I don't have to shop for too many people. Obviously, worrying about traveling. There's certain relatives that obviously you might have a little bit concern about seeing, and 24% of people get worried about seeing certain relatives. And obviously, the way that with politics and everything else is, that number may be up compared to when this was done. 16% of people have issues with needing to attend holiday parties and events. And again, COVID might change that for this year, there. And a decent number of people get worried about having to be nice. And it's like 15% of people worry about having to be nice. And kind of assuming that it means to people that you don't like, you know what I mean? But who knows? But some people get worried about tipping during the holidays and other kinds of stuff like that. But there's obviously a bunch of negativity that can come with it. But obviously, that's not really the point of all of this. Things are supposed to be fun, supposed to be joyful, and obviously, you can make it filled with health and not stress. So well, I'm not going to sit there and say that you're going to be able to get rid of all the stress that you have during this time and be completely good. It's possible that somebody might be completely good and not have, not eat any foods that they're not supposed to eat. I'm, want to be realistic, but you can obviously try to, let's say, contain the damage, right? So there's a couple of different options. So there's different things that you can do. And one of the things that you can do is actually kind of like plan things out, right? So we'll go through different strategies or other kinds of things that you can do to make the holiday season a little bit better. But, again, planning is one of those big things that ends up being an issue. So if you go through this exercise, the general idea is to try to take a couple of minutes, just write some of the stuff down, and I'll try to put some of these in the chat so you guys can get a hold of them. If this is on YouTube later, obviously people can pause and go back. But basically, the idea is that this is kind of like a goal setting exercise of the different kind of things of what your ideal is. What is the ideal kind of stuff that you want to do over the holiday season. So again, if you have a fuzzy target, it's not necessarily going to be achieved, or you're not going to necessarily hit it, because if you can't define what it is that you want, then it ends up creating issues. So a couple of things that would be is that who would you actually want to spend time with, right? So what kind of, what are the people that you actually want to plan out spending your time with? That's, one thing, right? Next things would be, what are the foods that you would like to eat, right? People have certain things during the holidays that they like to eat when it comes to the foods. And if they're having issues with that, obviously, here, let me grab something so I can actually get this up. So if you're having issues with some of those foods, obviously there's going to be some foods that you really, really look forward to, and there's going to be other foods that you don't. Write down the foods that you want, and you can plan around the foods that you actually want to eat. So if you're looking forward to, like, for example, my mother-in-law makes this fantastic chocolate cheesecake, I will plan stuff around eating that, knowing that I might not eat something else because I want to eat that chocolate cheesecake and maybe have 2 slices, but that's a different story, right? What presents do you want to purchase? What gifts would you want to receive? Where would you want to be? Where do you want to actually like open presents? What do you want to actually do? Those kind of things. And then figuring out how you would actually define the holiday season as successful. And I put that in the chat right there. So what kind of thing would make it so that you had a good holiday season? And once you kind of go through and spend a little bit of time with that, and I'm not going to like sit and wait right now, but the idea is to take some of these things and go back and think about it. Because if reach, New Year's Eve, or, like the first week of the year, and you're kind of like, yeah, this season just kind of sucked. It was too stressful and I didn't do what I wanted and all that other kind of stuff. You have to define what it is that you want in the first place in order to know, to plan everything out and make sure that you actually like get what you want, right? So just take a little bit of time to think about it. Obviously, I'm not going to make everybody share and everything right now, and you don't necessarily have to post it, but it's something to think about as to like what's there, right? So that's something I think that is important. And when it comes down to it, the idea is don't go through all of these things, like whether or not it's that previous like exercise that I was talking about, or any of these other strategies, don't make it like a jacuzzi, right? Jacuzzis feel good, but they don't really do a lot, right? And you don't change your life by sitting in a hot tub for 45 minutes. So the idea is that you need to do things in order to impact the way that, the season actually is and how your health actually is, and kind of go from there. And obviously, you need to be ready to, try some of these strategies. And again, not every single one of them is going to work for every person, but some of those, hopefully you'll come away with a couple of things that you might like. So first thing is, again, self-awareness, like that whole thing that we talked about planning what it is that you want. This is going to be part of this. So awareness, being aware of yourself, obviously that is a super powerful skill. And from what I've seen, again, that's going to be a lot of the issues between making your goals and then missing them. Obviously, we have an extremely on the go type of society. We have all kinds of distractions that we can get at any point. You have like, how many different streaming subscriptions or, do you have where, you can go and binge watch any kind of random show, right? There's a whole lot of distractions, a whole lot of things, a whole lot of poor choices that can get made when it comes to multiple different things. Not only like the foods that you can put in your bodies, ignoring the people that you love, struggling with productivity, those different types of things. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff that's there. So you have to just kind of like take the time to be aware of the different things that are going on, and you need to prioritize. So you need to be aware of the food and the drinks that you're putting in your body. You need to be aware of the time that you're allocating to be with your family. You need to be aware of the money that you spend, the attitude that shows up, when you're traveling, when you're dealing with other people, that, you know, the people that are helping you get from one place to another, or the people that day to day, obviously making sure that you don't treat people, um, obviously in a way that you don't, that you shouldn't, obviously paying attention to physical activity, because these next month that's here, like December is one of those months where people are like, you know what, I'm just going to give up on doing things. I'm going to give up on physical activity. They don't necessarily like, they're planning on making their resolution for the new year, and that's when they're going to do things, whereas it's better to continue to do those physical activity things, because if you woke your butt up and you went and you burned a bunch of calories by working out, you might be less interested in just throwing the baby out with the bathwater and just eating whatever it is that you want when you're still working on the physical activity. And obviously being aware of the people that you're interacting with. So you know you should be trying to engage in the activities that I was just talking about. Try to find joy where you can. So obviously, when it comes down to it, is that when it comes to the foods and stuff like that, obviously sugary sweets are going to be all over the place. I know that one of the things that I have to deal with on a regular basis is that I have lovely patients that want to share all kinds of unhealthy things with me, and they bring me stuff, and then it's like, okay, right, that's delicious, but I have to try to be good. But when people are bringing in candy and all kinds of other stuff, cookies and everything else, it ends up being hard. So again, trying to make sure that you're keeping your goals in mind, how much that you can actually like, you know, there's a little bit of cheating's okay maybe, but making sure that you're keeping the end goal in mind, and not being impulsive with your decisions. Um, again, making sure that you're um, when you're with your family, and when you're spending time with family, maybe asking yourself questions like, am I showing up as the character that I would want to be? Like, are you proud of the way that you act? Are you doing the best version of yourself? Are you acting the best that you can, given the circumstances that you're in? So again, it's just making sure that you're hyper aware of what's going on with yourself during the holidays, so you can be the best version of yourself. Okay. So when it comes to food, obviously food is like a big issue. Like that's, the first thing that people worry about when it comes to the holidays, like I said, was like the lines and stuff like that. Number two is gaining weight. So this is one of those kind of things where you have to try to be aware of it. And I honestly, like, part of the issue is that there's a lack of planning that people have. So when it comes down to it, you want to try to take control of your diet, and it doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to be the most strict and not have like anything that you like. It's planning it out, like I said. So when it comes down to it, food is fuel. You have to make sure that um you know that you fuel yourself appropriately, um, plan out any indulgences that you have, and kind of go from there. So different things like trying to avoid eating um, at least about 3 hours before you go to bed. That's one thing that can be good. Different people do different things. There's intermittent fasting and there's other kinds of stuff like that. But some people will also eat the 5 to 6 small meals a day. It's one of those kind of things where everybody has different options, and sometimes you have to try a couple of different things. This might not be the best time to like try new stuff, but when it comes down to it, some people intermittent fasting works for them, and some people eating 5 to 6 small meals a day works well. You have to just make sure that it's full of good food. A big thing is chewing your food really well. And that just helps to slow you down when everything is going on and you get stressed and you stress eat, and then you're eating on the go and you're just like throwing things in your face, and then you just get a move on. that ends up making it so that you don't necessarily know that you're full. Um, Fill your plate one time and make sure that it's colorful, right? So as opposed to going back multiple times, it's a good thing to just take your plate, fill it up one time, make sure that it's not this super giant plate, but make sure that it's got different colors on it. And the color shouldn't just be white, right? It shouldn't just be like, white potatoes and white gravy and, like that kind of stuff. Different color gravy doesn't necessarily count. But again, the idea is to make sure that there's different colors, just like there is on the picture that's here. Again, you have multiple different colors that are there. There should be multiple different colors on your plate. And that's not just a good thing for the holidays. That's all the time. You should have a variety of different colors. Again, trying to hit those servings of fruit and vegetables per day. We'll talk about something here in a little bit, but prioritizing the protein that you have and prioritizing the vegetables that you're going to have are the two probably the most important things that you can do. Because if you're just randomly eating like sweets throughout the day, fruits are great, but because of the other sweets and stuff like that, fruit shouldn't be the priority. You should plan out what your vegetables are going to be and make sure that you have enough protein. Um, you know, Saying no to gravy could be an option that you have, like again, especially if you don't like absolutely just look, if that's not like the food that you just look forward to and you're just drizzling extra calories on top of the other stuff, then maybe pick something else, right? Because it's not necessarily always the best thing. But other strategies that you can have with food are going through and making sure that you have meals ready. So it could be, meals that you prepare and then freeze. You could get, there are obviously options that, maybe not the best, but um, you could get other meals that you can make sure that you have so that you're not just grabbing whatever's there, right? When we don't have things planned out, we grab whatever's on the counter, and the stuff that's on the counter isn't always like the good food, right? So you get busy with shopping, decorating, traveling, all that other kind of stuff. Make sure that you have meals planned out, and that's just a good strategy in general. Um, Again, try to prepare foods if you can, have things in your refrigerator, cut things up. Right now, and I have help from my wife, you get I have like 3 salads that are sitting in my refrigerator so that when I'm done with this, I'm going to go have lunch and I don't have to worry about prepping things, cutting up the peppers and doing all the different stuff from there. I can just, use the dressing and then go from there. Um, Frozen is not necessarily the best, but it's not a bad thing, right? Fresh is going to be good, but if you have like frozen, peas or other kind of veggies and stuff like that, again, that's better than having processed stuff that's in a can and other kinds of stuff like that, right? So there's just a handful of different things to kind of go from there. So this is just an example again of all the different colors that you can get. Lots of green, lots of red, oranges, all that other kind of stuff. Okay. So one of the books that I like and I like to show to people is this book that's called Fat Loss Happens on Monday. I'm not going to go through everything that is sorry, didn't see that, Dave. I will get that actually, we'll go from here. So non-meat sources of protein to consider. I'm not sure about Daily Harvest, but what I would tell you is that obviously people look at tofu. That's one thing that's a possibility. I would say that tofu is something to be careful of just because of the fact that because tofu is made from soy, there are plenty of people who react to soy, and soy also has those estrogen type qualities that go with it. So that can be problematic for both men and women. So that's something that ends up being an issue. Um, Obviously, you do get protein when it comes to veggies, you do get protein when it comes to nuts, different stuff like that. But one of the best things that I think, like one of the products that I really like, is that there is a pea protein that is available. The company is called Sun Warrior, and it's Sun Warrior pea protein, and basically, I think they have a couple of different versions of it, but it would be something that you would add to smoothies and other kinds of stuff like that. You don't necessarily need to have like loads and loads and loads of protein, but it is one of those kind of things where, um, yeah, I think that that is good. You know, it's a different situation depending on what you're trying to do and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the Sun Warrior is an excellent, um, it's an excellent source of protein, and it's also good for people that have digestive issues and stuff like that. So hopefully that answers your question. Um, so going back to this fat loss happens on Monday thing, again, the general idea is that this book has a bunch of different things that are there, or habits that you can develop. It talks about them in what I think is a very reasonable way, where it's like, you know, it has like something like 11 or 12 different habits that you can develop. And but it talks about how like maybe you can't work on all 12 of them at the same time. So if you can, and maybe this is your type of personality, work on, you know, if they've got a numbered 1 through 11 or 12 or whatever the number was, you know, work on these first 3 things and then go from there. And then after you get that down, work on another one. Right. So there's a handful of different things that you can do. So the first one that they talk about, and they talk about like, and it doesn't matter what your um, it doesn't matter what your situation is that they always talk about the first thing that you need to do is plan your meals for the week, right? So if somebody is trying to lose weight, you need to plan out your meals for the week so that you actually have things that are ready to go, so that you can actually grab stuff when you're hungry that's not necessarily like uh, you know, a snack that's not so great for you. So planning meals for the week. And again, it could be that maybe you do a decent job with dinner, and that's not something that you have to um, prep for the week, but you should have everything planned out so you kind of know, so you don't have to do the whole hem haw. And maybe you can do like, you know, once a week where you can say, hey, we're gonna go out to eat, and maybe you don't necessarily have to have the location or the restaurant picked, but to have things planned out for the week is not a bad idea. Then the number 2 thing and the number 3 thing that ends up being kind of going along with number 1 is the shopping for it. So you have to plan what you're going to have for the week. Then you have to plan when you're going to shop for it. And then you have to plan when you're going to cook and prep the meals, right? So in a lot of these cases, you know, again, if you get home and you get home at a decent hour and you have time to actually like cook a decent meal, then maybe it's a different story. You know, with what I do, I usually get home fairly late. So, you know, fortunately, my wife makes things on the days that I'm home late. But we try to plan things out when it comes to it and prep. But during the week, like lunch, not necessarily a good thing. If I don't have things prepped, then it kind of ends up being the whim of whatever restaurant that is hitting my fancy that day, right? So trying to make sure that you're planning out the meal, then you shop for it, and then you take the time to cook and prep and have the containers ready and everything ready to go, right? So those are 3 things that are excellent at trying to work towards fat loss. Again, another one that we had talked about was protein, making sure that you try to get protein at every meal if you can, whether or not it's with a supplement or whether or not it's like a lean animal meat or whatever. Another one that they talk about is eating slowly, right? Taking those bites, those small bites, chewing your food, you know, because what happens is that your the information that comes from your stomach up to your brain does not move fast. There's a, you know, everybody's like, you know, stepped on something that hurt, like a Lego or whatever, right? And you step on it and it, even that takes a second. Like you step on it, you realize what you've stepped on, and it doesn't necessarily hurt for like a split second later, right? So the information coming from your stomach and your digestive system back up to your brain is even slower than that, right? So it takes a long time for you to do it. And if you are putting food in too fast, then you don't know when you're full, right? Um, so eating slowly, taking a bunch of bites, you know, some people like recommend chewing things like a certain number of times or whatever, but you know, you take a little bit of time. Another thing that they recommend is stopping when you're 80% full, right? So you still have more signal that can get there, you still will probably be a little bit more full. But if you stop when you're about 80% full, then that gives you like you're planning out what you're eating, maybe the size, the portions, and all that other kind of stuff. But stopping when you're 80% full is a pretty good idea. Um, and then the other things, making sure that you have healthy fats. And then the big thing is quality carbs. And this is, for anybody, making sure that that your carbs that you're having are good quality carbs, something like brown rice, the carbs that you might get from fruits, carbs from vegetables, and making sure that the carbs aren't white, right? White potatoes, white rice, white bread, all that other kind of stuff. Those are all things that aren't necessarily like the best way um, to feed your body, right? So there's a handful of different stuff that's in through there. And something that they talk about in here that I just kind of like throwing in, just because to me, I think that this is kind of helpful. When you can look at that, when they talk about like the stuff, and this is one of the pictures that they have, is that they talk about your scale weight is the quantity of food that you eat, right? So the amount that you actually eat is going to be related to your scale weight. So that's not only going to be like the muscle mass that you have, but obviously the amount of fat that you have. Your body fat percentage is going to be a reflection of the quality of food that you eat and how strong that you are, right? So there's different types of things. There's like body, like again, you have BMI and other kinds of stuff, not necessarily great for an individual person, because somebody who's a bodybuilder is going to be obese according to a BMI thing, but body fat percentage is a decent way to kind of look at some of this stuff. Again, there's going to be different levels for men versus women and that, but something to kind of think of, somebody that has the tendency to have those white carbs um, that I was talking about before, they also have the tendency to have a higher body fat percentage and have the tendency to be, we'll say, a little fluffier, right? Again, not quite, and even like the quality of the body fat that somebody can have can be different. Somebody can have dense body fat, or they can end up having, you know, like I said, basically fluffier body fat. So there's a little bit of differences that kind of go, again, that's, basically years of experience of, poking people and prodding and different stuff like that. Not going to say that, that I'm an expert at everything, but that is something that you notice that some people have, or, that it's definitely going to be a reflection of the quality of foods that they're eating, right? With how some of that stuff is set up. So just one of those kind of things to kind of throw out there. So that body fat percentage, somebody that has a higher body fat percentage looks a little larger. Somebody that has, um, denser body fat doesn't look quite as large. But again, your scale weight is going to be a different thing. So those are two separate issues that kind of go along with that. So one thing to look at it is, obviously when we go through all this, is that there's buffets are going to be in your future, most likely. And one of the things that you should repeat to yourself before you get there, when you know that there's going to be a buffet, is that, state your name, I state your name, and then will not be defeated by the buffet. Right? Think to yourself beforehand, make sure that you plan it out, make sure that you're not just showing up that you're absolutely starving, right? Before, to the meal, like that you plan to have like a giant meal at the buffet and load up your plate and go back 12 times and all that other kind of stuff. Think to yourself what you're going to do in order to make sure that you don't overeat when it comes to something like that, right? So try to get a smaller plate if you can, um, you know, or if you do have the larger plate, try not to go back for seconds, right? And if you want the smaller plate, you usually can ask, and people usually will have a smaller plate that is available. And then when they ask you why you want a smaller plate, you can say, I will not be defeated by the buffet, right? So there's a couple of different options when it comes to that. All right. Again, the thing that we were talking about, I was just talking about, is that you don't want to be um, starving yourself all day long in order to eat that monster meal, because you're not going to necessarily make the best choices when it comes down to it. Don't skip breakfast and lunch when you normally have it, during the holidays, because you know that you're going to make up for it at dinner. and, kind of go from there. So prior to leaving your house, you can maybe have a little bit of, either a nutritious meal or a snack, something like that. Obviously, it depends. Like, you don't necessarily need to eat right before you leave, but if you're having something at dinner, make sure that you have a good nutritious breakfast and a good nutritious lunch, right? Be at least somewhat full, right? You can drink water. All right, we'll talk about that more in a second. But in order to fill yourself up, you could drink a glass of water in order to help get yourself a little bit full. So you're not filling it with mashed potatoes or pie, and you're filling it with maybe something that is, not that bad, right? So if you're bringing something to an event, try to bring something that's healthy and enjoyable for you that you're going to like. Um, you know, so making sure that you actually have some kind of veggie that's there, or something that's there that, isn't necessarily going to be slathered in, like cream of mushroom soup or whatever, right? There's multiple different things that you can do when it comes to that. So, obviously there is probably going to be some behavior that might be out of control or whatever. You're probably going to splurge and everything. That's all fine. It's just making sure that you're not going to regret it later on, right? Like, I would regret if I didn't have eggnog at least once per holiday season, but I don't necessarily need to buy like the gallon jug of it, you know, that kind of stuff, right? So trying to be maybe a little bit cleaner outside of the holiday parties to help neutralize some of the behaviors might be a good idea. Um, Liquid calories. That's another thing that you want to be aware of, is that, this is in general, but when it comes to the holidays, eggnog, wine, beer, hard alcohol, super sugary drinks like, pop soda, that kind of stuff. Um, Again, try to avoid those liquid calories as much as you can. Gravy, if you want to include that too, I don't know. But try to include a little bit of water, right? Making sure that you're doing that. Again, you can kind of play around with it, not to say that you can't have any of those things, but just make sure that that's not like the only thing that you're having when it comes to that you're not just having eggnog and all that other kind of stuff, right? You can even make it a little bit festive and maybe take some cranberries and flavor the water. Maybe add like a little pinch of cinnamon, stir it up, maybe get a little bit of flavor with it, something like that. There's some options that are there, but you just want to be mindful, because those liquid calories are the ones that go on and get in your system the fastest, but they're not, obviously there's not really a lot of nutrition and stuff like that with them. And it was, fun for me with my kids going through, because I have maybe one, Pepsi or whatever per month. I had a drink the other day, and I made my daughter look at her apple juice and look at my Pepsi and figure out which one had more sugar in it. And when she figured out that her apple juice had more sugar than the Pepsi, her mind was like, what? So it's kind of crazy when it comes down to that. And obviously, we don't necessarily like water down their juice anymore, but we did when they were younger, for sure. So just something to kind of think of when it comes to that. Obviously, other things to think of are focusing on more than just food, all the other kind of stuff that's there, spending time with people, friends, all that other kind of stuff. So maybe try to play some games with people, tell stories, sing, dance, have fun, go caroling, whatever. Um, you know, go through snapshots for the year, right? Whether or not it's like, pictures, other kinds of stuff. You can organize up clutter, have a good time doing that, revisit memories, those kind of things. Find maybe a new game to play, go on a hike, try to find an art project. Multiple different things that you can do. You can create new traditions, have a good time when you're doing it, get up and move, and kind of go from there. So here's a challenge that you can do. If you're going to go to a party, try to have a conversation with at least 5 people before you take your first bite of food, right? That's something that you can have, where you can go to one group, talk with people for a little while, talk with another one, so you don't just go straight to the snack bar and start going crazy on it first. That's something that's a challenge that you can have. I know that will challenge me, right? So getting up and moving, right? Exercise, again, huge thing that's there. Again, don't obviously, people eat more. You things that kind of goes with that is that people have the tendency to move less, like I talked about. Less exercise happens over the holidays because people will skip their daily fitness routine because they're basically planning on having that giant meal later, and like, what's the use, right? When they're going to be having that giant buffet that's going on. Um, you don't need to have everything fall apart in the last month of the year, just to promise yourself that you're going to go through and do the New Year's resolutions that basically never ever work, right? So try to exercise for at least 30 minutes, like 4 times a week, each week during the holiday season. Um, get creative with the movement. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a full on go to the gym and get super sweaty, right? You can have a dance competition with your family, um, you know, video it, put it on TikTok, whatever, right? And even if you're not with each other, you can do competitions across that way. Getting with your partner, scheduling workouts in your calendar, using permanent markers so you can't erase it. Um, uh, you know, and maybe, obviously if it's on your phone, that's a different story. Probably not using Sharpie on your phone would probably be a good idea, but that's a different thing. If you are going to go to the mall, or if you're going to go to the store, park far away from it so you have to walk a little bit further. You can do 5-minute exercise intervals where you're doing 5 minutes worth of push-ups, jumping jacks, running in place, and do it multiple times during the day. So you might not necessarily be able to get 30 minutes all in one go, but if you can do 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, then that's something that might work out for you, right? Walking at a steady pace whenever you're shopping, not just like walking lazily and browsing. Again, playing games with the kids in your family can also be a fun thing to do. Making sure that you have a pedometer and getting your 10,000 steps. If you're doing stuff, if you're a runner, making sure that you sign up for a holiday race can be a good thing. um, and then just have a plan, right? Making sure that you schedule breaks for yourself so you can calm down, get everything, relax, chill, not check your to-do list, don't check your email, don't make phone calls, don't jump out of bed, trying to freak out about all the other kind of stuff that you have. Give yourself a little bit of time during the day in order to kind of relax, gather yourself, meditate if you want to, right? Close your eyes, um, you know, imagine being in a beautiful place, with or without snow, right? Think of a happy memory, visualize yourself like succeeding. Again, there's a whole bunch of different things that are there, but taking those breaks during the day, again, they don't have to be like, an hour, but taking a minute, taking 5 minutes, stuff like that, giving yourself relaxing, breathing, slowing down. It can be a good thing. Maybe, like part of taking care of others is making sure that you take care of yourself, right? And that's just something to just kind of remember just in general. Um, Obviously trying to be generous, um, giving your time, maybe small gifts to others, writing a note, expressing gratitude. Um, there's multiple different ways that you can give, obviously not just presents. Trying to make a commitment to um, helping people out, obviously, if you can, right? Um, there's different recipes, obviously, that you can find. There's all kinds of different stuff that's out there. You can get paleo recipes. You can get plant-based recipes. There's different holiday, like there's Thanksgiving recipes, healthy Christmas. Obviously, look for a handful of different things. We'll go from there. One of the things that I will do later is that I have a couple of different links that I will send everybody that's here, so that you guys can get a handful of recipes, and 10 of them will be plant-based recipes. So, hopefully those will work out for you, right? So there's a handful of different things that are there. So again, trying different recipes, trying different stuff out is definitely not a bad thing. So, again, holidays will be stressful. You're going to have a whole bunch of food. You're going to have time that you need to spend with family that you may not enjoy. Hopefully that you can avoid all that as much as you can. But Travel can be exhausting and everything else, but again, if you are trying to take action, if you're trying to take control and plan things out, things will definitely be better than if you just kind of like fly by the seat of your pants, right? So hopefully you're feeling maybe a little bit motivated, not too overwhelmed with me pointing out all the stuff that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. But again, holidays are busy for everybody, and just like I said, try to plan things out as best as you can. Thanks for being here. And if you have any questions, obviously we can go over them here in a little bit. If you're on YouTube later on, obviously you can ask questions below and I'll try to answer them. But you can reach out, go to my website at besttoledochiropractor.com. Obviously people can call, schedule, make appointments, all that other kind of stuff. And you can obviously find social stuff on there. And I think that's about it. So if anybody has any questions, obviously feel free to shoot. You can unmute or you can, put them in the chat, either way.
Hey, Brian, this is David. I got a question.
Sure.
You had mentioned avoiding liquid calories, eggnog, beer, hard liquor, things like that. And usually the holidays, those usually come out. Sometimes I justify having a drink by, having a glass of red wine. Is there still health benefits associated with that, or am I just fooling myself by having red wine? At the end of the day, it's still empty calories.
Well, I don't even know if there's these French people that like wine. I don't know if you know that.
They don't drink a whole lot.
No, they don't. No. So, I mean, I think that I think if I remember correctly, it's kind of like still in a gray area of how much that's actually helpful. But honestly, what it comes down to is that I don't think when it comes to going to a party or doing something that drinking like a glass or two of red wine is a bad thing. You know what I mean? When you talk about like of the different options that you have, red wine is probably one of the better ones. Like when you talk about like, eggnog, that's not really good for you. It's delicious in my opinion, but it's one of those kind of things where it's not super good for you. In general, like again, because it depends on which way that you want to look at it. From a standpoint of inflammation, red wine is actually decent. It doesn't have a lot of sugar in it. It doesn't have a lot of stuff, and all of the tannins and the different compounds that are in it have anti-inflammatory properties. Same kind of thing with like stout beer or darker beers. They usually have, the anti-inflammatory types of properties. So, the difference between that versus, having any number of the different super sugary kinds of things, again, I would say red wine is probably one of the better options. And and it's good too. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that they basically the way that they kind of say from the standpoint of, health, it's basically kind of said, be like, don't start drinking just so that you can have red wine because it's going to be good for you. You know what I mean? But but if you're going to have like, again, people that don't have issues with drinking and obviously stuff like that, like having, a couple glasses of red wine, because again, part of that is also like the relaxation, kind of like just stopping and chilling, like if, having a glass of red wine a night is not a bad thing. Having 6, yeah, that's a bad thing, but that's kind of, that's kind of one way to look at it. So hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? All right, cool. So I guess if there's nothing else, then I guess we are all set. So I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for being here. And obviously, hopefully you learned a little bit. But obviously you need to pay attention to your health because again, you got to take care of yourself. But anyway, that is about it. And thank you very much for being here.